sense, who is everybody?
Okay, so you are a member of a regional healthcare conference. We are talking about the charge masters, which are a certain pricing structure that all hospitals within the United States currently use. They disproportionately disadvantage the uninsured, and we're arguing that those pricing structures should be changed.
Are you ready to start?
The problem that we are going to be discussing today is the problem facing nearly 40 million Americans, uninsured Americans, and the prices that they incur when they do need to receive medical care. The problem seems to be focused mainly on the hospital's charge master, which is simply the federally mandated the pricing list that all hospitals are required to have. The charge master was set up nearly half a century ago, and it set up the prices for all care and medicine that people receive. They were also set up so that they achieved systematic and yearly increases in cost and pricing that was supposed to coincide with supposed increases in the medical industry. The problem with this is that it does not take into account the fact that with technology and with new manufacturing, prices for care and for medicine have actually been decreasing ever since then. So the prices have been increasing in the charge list, but the prices have actually been decreasing for the medicine and the care. Because of insurance companies, most people do not actually pay what charge masters list as their prices. The insurance companies are able to be an intermediary between the patient and the hospital and to achieve lower prices. But uninsured Americans are at a disadvantage in this particular place because they don't have that intermediary to be the go-between between the hospital and their bill. Now, our solution is...
So what we're proposing is that hospitals actually abandon their charge master prices as they are, and that what they adopt in its place is a fairer pricing model. They're going to do this by making it so that uninsured patients pay the standard amount paid by the insurance company which has secured the lowest negotiated rate. And when we look at the mission statements of hospitals, they're going to vary from hospital to hospital, but there's common themes that underlie all those hospitals' missions. They want to improve the well-being of a community. They want to help the disadvantaged. They want to be there to support those who are most in need, who are physically unable of providing for themselves when they've broken their legs, when they've fallen sick, when they need somebody with medical professional experience to be able to tell them what they need to do to get better when they need aid. We think underlying this is a moral sentiment of virtuous character. Hospitals as institutions are trying to foster and fulfill a role within a community. They're trying to exemplify the virtues of compassion and integrity, and by doing this, they foster trust with their patients. This is going to be good not only for hospitals, but for the whole of society.
And despite the undoubtedly good motives that hospitals hold, we can see narratives just about anywhere we look of people complaining about these egregious charges, charged to them if they don't have insurance. We can see somebody who comes out with $300,000 in debt because they have to do a 2-night stay for a routine chest exam. They had to go through some processes and call in special doctors, and it turns out you just have some indigestion, and we thought it was going to be a heart problem, but we had to consult these people, and we're sorry, we have to pay them and you have to pay us. And these people, it kind of causes a sense of moral outrage because, in a sense, we see ourselves as we could be any one of those people who's uninsured, who gets charged this ridiculous amount. Even if it's not some 5,000% increase, if it's even 100%, 200%, anything along those lines, we can see that and we can feel a sense of compassion for those who are being overcharged. Especially, I think what causes the moral outrage is our sense that it's not treating moral equals equally. We can see in a society that, as a hospital especially, we should value value people as having dignity in and of themselves, regardless of their social status. I can look at somebody who's a worker in a steel mill in, let's say, some Midwest state, and I can say that that person is valuable as a human being just as much as Paris Hilton and her dog are. And, you know, it doesn't matter what your status is, how much money you have, or whether you have insurance or not. Your life should be valuable to an institution that bases its entire business on healing the sick. And we feel that the moral outrage is generally generated by this perceived difference between the treatment of people that are supposedly equal. And we find that our proposal is one that is able to remediate some of these issues. And secondly, we find that another sense of moral outrage is generated by the sentiment that it's not treating people fairly, because we have a sense where it's not just that somebody's being treated unequally, but it's about who's being treated unequally. Why is it that we're specifically trying to stick it to the poor? Why are we choosing the person who is the least well off to decide that that's the person we want to take the money from? We decide that, oh, well, maybe they can't negotiate, maybe they don't have a lawyer, maybe they don't have ways of combating this, maybe we can stick it to them, and maybe they'll pay it. We don't know, but whatever. And we find that that is how people view the hospital. We don't want to go out on a limb and say that that's the intent of the hospital, or that, you know, there's some evil motives running the business department. All we're saying is that the public sees it this way, and that our proposal can help eliminate that. It's akin to the public viewing it as a girl in as a young girl who needs water, who's drowning, or not drowning, she's dying of dehydration. She goes to a store, and the person tries to charge her $300 for the water bottle. She has no idea what the price is, but she has this money from her parents. It's easy to gouge her because she's in need and she has the ability to pay, but we all would say that's disgusting. It's like, why are we choosing to prey on the person who, you know, doesn't know what's going on, or doesn't have the ability to negotiate, or has, you know, the need forced upon them? And lastly, it's important that we view the moral outrage as being a case of unfairness, in that it capitalizes on the proximity issue. Whereas if somebody, it's not a free market situation. If somebody is on the job and they get their hand chopped off, they're not going to be able to go hospital searching, well, which one do I want to go to? Let me type with my one hand and figure out which one has the best prices. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be, let's get this guy to a hospital, call an ambulance, now let's get him there. And once he gets there, he might find that he has to pay 4 to 5 times more than somebody with insurance. And we find that to be almost disgusting in a sense, morally. But we feel that we have options for fixing this, but I would like to pass it off to my partner and discuss these more thoroughly.
So the problem as it stands is one of exploitation. The charge master, as Jordan mentioned earlier, inflates yearly, and it does so at a standard rate. It doesn't take into account the differences in technology and the lowering cost of manufacturing healthcare solutions. So the result of this is that the charge master is completely arbitrary. It doesn't take into account the costs incurred by hospitals in performing treatments. It doesn't take into account the regional costs of living. It doesn't take into account what hospitals actually pay their employees. So it just keeps growing. And the ones who have to bear the brunt of this are the uninsured. And they're the least well off. They generally have less education, and so have less accessible means of defending themselves, both from the point of they don't have the ability to read the readouts of the charge master. It's supposed to be, and the government recognizes this, that the hospitals are obligated to provide information about the cost of procedures, and for that to be acquirable without having to go through the procedure. Nevertheless, the readouts for this information are steeped in a kind of jargon that only people with years of technical training, particularly those at insurance companies, actually possess. So were it any other demographic, it seems there would be much more vocal outrage about this. That it's the uninsured, that it's the poor, means that generally those people who fall at the brunt of this weight are less capable of defending themselves and less knowledgeable of the alternatives available and of the egregiousness of this cost. If hospitals actually adopt the solution we are recommending, then they will be recognizing that they fulfill a certain function within society, that function is determined by their capabilities, and that those capabilities allow them to not only provide certain health outcomes to individuals, but they allow them to foster certain characteristics within society and to promote certain values. They allow... Is that 10? Okay. They allow...
20 seconds, is that fair?
They allow us to better recognize the virtues of compassion, of integrity, by keeping their promises, and thus they foster a relation of trust with the community.